What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the Order of the Scribes Wizard. This is the ultimate bookworm, the ultimate nerd, the one that always has a face in the book. But does that make you better than the other ones, or is studying too much, maybe you can be too much of a nerd? We'll just have to see. But before we do, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We are less than 30 subscribers away from our goal of 5,000 subscribers, and so please help us to get there. And of course, we will be having a 5,000 sub special very soon in the future. Planning on that has already begun, so hopefully we will be getting to that soon so I can release that very soon after we finish the Wizard series, hopefully. So the Order of the Scribes Wizard, I've been getting a lot of comments about this one as to when it's coming and how much people really like it. And yeah, it's a really interesting way of looking at the Wizard. Obviously, this is one of the later editions coming along in Tasha's, but it's still cool. It offers a lot of really cool stuff, and it combines some things that are really nice from some of the other Wizards, while taking more of a generic approach. While you're not focusing on any specific school of magic, it kind of applies to everything all at once, and that might just end up giving us an advantage. So let's see if we can do all of those things at once, or if we should have specialized. Starting us off at level 2, we get a couple of features. Now, of course, we do not get a Savant feature because this is not one of the OG Wizards, but we get something very similar to that with some extra flavor with Wizardly Quill. So with this, as a bonus action, we can create a tiny quill in our hand, and it has a few interesting properties. Number 1, the quill does not require ink, and when we write with it, we can write with whatever color we want. That's cool. The time that we have to spend to copy a spell into our spell book is 2 minutes per spell level if we use this quill, and we can also erase anything that we have written down as a bonus action, provided that the text is within 5 feet of us. And of course, it disappears if we create a new one or if we die. So we're off to a really interesting start in that we are already cutting some things back. So we are creating ink with this quill, which is kind of cool. Now, one thing to consider here is that in no way does this say that it reduces the cost of materials. Now, you may work out something with your DM in saying that maybe half the cost is paper and half the cost is ink. You may be able to work that out with your DM. But as far as how this is written, it doesn't explicitly say that your cost of 50 gold pieces per level is at any point changed. So to me, as far as I can tell, that is unchanged. However, the time spent is vastly reduced. We are down to 2 minutes per spell level instead of an hour, which is a really good improvement. That makes this a lot faster, and it really opens up a lot of things as far as what we can do later. But this means that, you know, just between battles, if you find a scroll or find another spell book or whatever, as long as you've got the materials for it, you just scribble that down real quick, or even do it while you're traveling, just maybe across town or whatever it happens to be. You can do these things very quickly, which is really cool. And of course, we can erase things, which may or may not work out well for us. It just depends. So you could leave some kind of a document for somebody, and then if you think that somebody may come and see it that doesn't need to see it, you could erase it. So that definitely could work. To me, the most impactful thing, of course, is cutting that time down by a lot for our spell transcriptions, which is really cool. Again, your DM may allow you to cut the cost back in saying that half of it's ink and half of it's paper. There is nothing in the rules that says explicitly that that's how it works. So I'm going to go off of the assumption that our cost is still going to be the same. So we're not saving money on that side, but we do save time, which is still pretty good. Ultimately, it's a flavor piece, but there is still a very practical element to this flavor piece, and so that means it's going to rank higher than a lot of your other flavor pieces would be. And so for that reason, it's getting an 8 out of 10. I think there's a lot of use to this, both with our adding spells to our book, and the erasing feature I think will definitely come up. It's a bonus action to take away anything. It doesn't say one word or a couple words, it says anything. So you can just wave your quill over it, and if it's a whole document you wrote out that you no longer want somebody to see, it's gone, right? Really, really cool. So I think that this is definitely a good start. Also at level 2, we get Awakened Spellbook, and this makes this a little bit interesting. We now have kind of a friend with our book, and it's going to help us out in many different ways, which is pretty interesting. So the book is now basically a friend of ours. It now is kind of alive magically, sort of, but it is awakened, as it were, and it gets a few different things. Number one, it is now a spellcasting focus for us, so we don't need a wand, we don't necessarily need components, anything like that. This is going to serve as our focus, which is really good. When we cast a wizard spell with a spell slot, we can actually replace its damage type with the type of a different spell that also appears in our spell book, as long as it is the same level as that spell that we have just cast. And finally, when you cast a wizard spell as a ritual, you do not need to use the extended 10 minutes in order to cast it as a ritual the first time. Then you have to take a long rest after that. Then also on top of this at the end, it also says that we can replace our entire book on a short rest if we were to lose our book, which is pretty cool. So we just have to find a blank book or a magic spell book that we are attuned to, and we of course can take that short rest and copy everything down, which is really cool. So this also adds a lot of flavor to the wizard, right? That normally our spell book, while it is our best friend and has all our spells in it, normally if we were to lose that spell book for whatever reason, we're out. We're just out, and we'd have to try to figure it out from there. Now, how often is this happening? Depends on how much of a jerk your DM is, honestly. This is something I've never seen or done at my tables, because I think a lot of times it's just a jerk move, but I know that it does happen from time to time in order to teach your wizard a lesson, and you know, if that's what you're doing, then okay. But this takes away any of those consequences, which is cool for the player. It being a spellcasting focus is ultimately nice. It means that you do not have to use both hands, one for the book, one for the wand, or for the components, or whatever it happens to be. You can just have the book, so you're always gonna have a free hand, which is really good. And then of course, whenever we cast a spell, we can change the damage type. That's a big deal, right? Now, it does have to stay within the level that we are casting. So let's say you have Magic Missile, and let's say you have Witch Bolt for some reason, because you're crazy. You have Witch Bolt here now that could be cast as a force damage spell, because they are both first level spells. That is something very interesting that you could do with this, and of course get around some interesting immunities. Of course, you can also take advantage of certain spells, such as the chromatic orbs out there, at least the way that I can see it, and your DM may feel differently, but if a spell has access to all of those types, then you get access to all of those types elsewhere. Where it gets a little tricky is with something like Prismatic Wall at much higher levels. If you take another damaging spell instead of this one, and then it deals a different type of damage, can you now apply that damage type to all layers of the wall? I don't know. It's a weird one, right? My assumption is yes, but it's kind of a weird one. Or can you just pick and choose parts of the wall that you do or don't want? That's probably a question for your DM, because that's a bit of a weird one. But yeah, that could cause some problems. But yeah, so there's no like force ball instead of fireball, right? There's no third level spell that does force damage, and so there are a few restrictions in there, and it does have to be in your book. So for instance, if you have lightning bolt and fireball, you can interchange those, but if you only have one or the other, you can't. So there are a few restrictions in there, but ultimately it's pretty good and works really well. And finally, of course, we talk about the ritual aspect of this, which is cool, right? Because the way that rituals work with wizards is that if you have it in your book, you can cast it as a ritual and take the extra 10 minutes. It does not have to be prepared. This allows you to, again, not prepare that spell and still be able to cast it quickly without needing that extra time, which is pretty cool. To me, the most obvious choice in this is going to be Tiny Hut, if we needed to get that going a little bit faster than normal, but obviously there are some other options out there. If you wanted a familiar really quickly, then that's also a thing. But I think that this could really help, and I think that there are a lot of situations where this will come up. So ultimately really good, and this is a little bit more useful. There's still a little bit of flavor in here, but ultimately all of this is mechanically nice, and I think all of it works to our benefit, which is really cool. The being able to change damage types is huge, because you may have some effects, or it may be the shape of the spell or whatever it is more beneficial, but the damage type is awful, and then you can change that around in order to get around some resistances. There's definitely a lot of really good stuff in there, and so for me, this is a 9 out of 10 feature. I think this is really strong in how this all works. It gets rid of some really interesting things that are potential weaknesses while rare, losing your book, which is a thing. You could have issues with having to have a wand and having your book, and there'd be a thing with not having an open hand. That could be a problem, and of course this solves that too. So there's a lot of stuff that this kind of little creature comforts that some wizards may run into, and this solves pretty much all of them. So ultimately it's really nice. At level 6 we get Manifest Mind, and now things are getting a little interesting. So with this, as long as we have our Awakened Spellbook around, as a bonus action we can create a tiny little floating object, and it hovers around us, and of course we can create that within a 60-foot radius of us. It creates a little bit of light around it, and of course it can hear and see and has dark vision with a range of 60 feet. And of course the mind can telepathically share what it sees and hears with no action required. Whenever we cast a wizard spell on our turn, we can cast it as if it was in that space, and we can do that a number of times per day equal to our proficiency bonus. And also as a bonus action, we can cause it to move up to 30 feet. It can pass through creatures, but not objects. It can never be more than 300 feet away from us, or it will also disappear if someone casts Dispel Magic, if the Awakened Spellbook is destroyed, if we die, or if we dismiss it as a bonus action. Once we do this one time, we cannot do it again until we finish a long rest, unless we expend a spell slot of any level to get it back. This is very interesting. This is the ultimate way of scouting, so the rogue can shut up. Of course it can't go through walls or anything, so it's not just magical that way, but it hovers, it flies, you can see and hear through it, and then you can cast spells through it. This is absolutely incredible, and honestly this could be potentially game breaking, dungeon breaking. This is very, very strong. So you go into a place that is very confined. You go into a dungeon, you find where the enemy is, and you can see what that enemy is doing. Obviously it sees that it is being watched, but I mean you could also drop a fireball on it right before the fight, so you're from safety, you're a ways away, and you just drop a fireball on it just to soften it up before the fight even starts. You could drop a cloud kill in a confined space if you can get into it. There's all kinds of ways that you can make this work, and there's a lot that can be done here. It can't be attacked. Anything can just swing at it with a sword. It does not matter. It's going to ignore it because it doesn't take damage. If it's hit with a Dispel Magic, of course, then it's gone. But otherwise, you're pretty much free to do whatever the heck you want. So that's also a really, really big deal. I think this feature is potentially game breaking in certain situations if you are creative and smart with it. It's really good. So yeah, this is a 10 out of 10. I really don't care. It's a 10 out of 10. Being able to scout very, very safely is incredible, and then being able to cast a spell from it is great. We get a proficiency bonus times per day. That is plenty. We can do a lot with that number. So I love this. I think it's absolutely fantastic. At level 10, we get Master Scrivener, and this allows us to make our own spell scrolls, which could be good. We'll just have to see. So of course, using our wizardly quill, we can take a piece of paper and write down one of our spells that is already in our spell book, as long as our book is right there. The spell does have to be of first or second level and must have a casting time of 1 action. Once in the scroll, the spell's power, of course, once that spell is in the scroll, it automatically is upcast by 1 level. So the first level spell becomes a second level, and the second level becomes a third. We can cast the spell from the scroll by reading it as an action, and if anyone else tries to read it, it is unintelligible. We also are adept at crafting spell scrolls, and we can do that in half the time using our wizardly quill. This is interesting. So basically what we're doing is we are spending a lower level spell slot in order to get the value of a slightly higher one, right? So we could cast a magic missile again into this, and then it becomes second level. So we get an extra little missile in there for free, right? It's decent, right? Now the big thing is that we can't pass this to somebody else. That's the only thing, right? Now, of course, I don't think comprehend languages is going to get you around this. I don't think that there are ways to necessarily try to break this, but either way, I think that this is still decent. I don't think it's insane. I don't think it's game breaking by any means. But the fact that we can make our own spell scrolls and do it somewhat quickly is nice, but yeah, ultimately I don't think that this is anything insane. It's basically just trading a first level spell slot for a second one, or a second for a third, but we can't use it on spells of those levels. It has to be upcast spells, so you just have to be careful on which one you choose to use this on. Ultimately, it's a 7 out of 10. It's fine. It's not the best thing out there. There definitely is a benefit to being able to upcast these things, but I think there's a little too many restrictions on it for it to be any higher than that, so it's okay. Finally, at level 14, we get one with the word, and we now are the ultimate nerd, and the book basically sustains our entire life at this point. So with this, whenever we have our book on us, we get a few different things. We have advantage on any Arcana checks as long as they are for remembering magical lore, and on top of that, if we take damage while our mind is manifested, of course back from 6th level, we can prevent all of the damage by using our reaction to dismiss it. We then roll 3d6, and the spellbook now temporarily loses spells of our choice with a combined level equal to that roll or higher. For example, if we rolled 9, then spells vanish from the book with a combined total of at least 9, which could mean 1 9th level spell, 3 3rd levels, or various combinations to make that as well. If there aren't enough spells, you hit 0 hit points, knocked out. Until you finish 1d6 long rests, you are incapable of casting those spells. Even if you find them on a scroll or in somebody else's book, it does not matter. They are gone for that time. And after we finish those rests, those spells come back, and we can only do this once per long rest. This is an interesting feature, and I don't want to use it very much. This honestly, how valuable this is going to be incredibly dependent on what actually you are given throughout the course of your campaign. If you have just the minimum spells and haven't found spell scrolls, haven't found other spell books, haven't found these things to add to your book, you obviously are going to get a lot less value out of this because you would have a lot less spells to burn in the case of using this. I also am really only going to worry about using this if I'm about to take a massive hit, right? If I'm about to take 100 damage and I'm a squishy wizard, right, and it may flat out kill me, yeah, I'm gonna use this, right? But if it's just gonna knock me out, I may need to think about it for a second. I need to see if it's actually worth dispelling the manifest mind, because that is so valuable. And I also need to see if I have enough spells to get rid of and still be okay. 3d6 can be a lot. That's 18 potentially, right? That's if we roll max, but still that's the equivalent of 2 9th level spells. That's a lot, right? And so maybe you've got some useless 7th or 8th level ones in there. It just depends. So really it comes down to, have you found a bunch of spell books along the way, a bunch of spell scrolls, been able to copy those down? Of course, you are the best out there at copying spells down into your book. So in that aspect, hopefully you have. It's just a matter of finding them and making sure you have access to them. That is a big deal, right? You're the ultimate nerd. Hopefully you are seeking these things out throughout the course of your campaign. Make sure you're having these conversations with your DM saying, I need to find these or else I'ma just die, right? So I think that there are reasons to possibly have some useless spells in here just as cannon fodder for when you need to use this. Ultimately, it's really good. It's a really good survival feature. Yeah, we get advantage on Arcana, whatever. But really, I'm here for being able to save my own life. So obviously, it's going to vary based on your campaign, but ultimately, I think that this comes out to an 8 out of 10. Obviously, the drawback can be pretty harsh, and I need to think about this in the case of most tables, and so you may not get all that many at your table. And in that case, you're going to get a lot less value out of this than somebody else. So what do we think of the Order of the Scribes wizard? This one is a lot of fun. I absolutely love this wizard. I played it not too terribly long ago for a 3-shot, and it's a ton of fun, right? It is a ton of fun. I cast Cold Ball a few times. I changed Phantasmal Force to a different damage type. We did some weird shenanigans with that, and so I think that it's a ton of fun. It's a really fun subclass. But you'll notice that I mentioned the second level. But you'll notice that I mentioned the second level feature a lot in there, and the reason is because that is what you're going to be using a ton, and everything else besides Manifest Mind you probably aren't going to use a lot of. The thing is, Wizardly Quill is nice, right? Of course, being able to cut back our time to write things in our book is incredibly good, right? Wizards are known for having to stay up all night to copy the spells because they don't have the time during the day. This cuts that way back. You can do it during a short rest if you want to, which is really good. Of course, erasing things, there's a niche use for that if we need to. I wouldn't say that it's the best thing out there, but there's a niche use for it. Awakened Spellbook, of course, is really nice. Being able to swap around damage types is good. Manifest Mind is great for scouting, for casting spells from safety. Really good stuff there. Master Scrivener and One with the Word are where things get a little bit more situational for me. And I don't see them as things that we're going to be really focusing on a lot of the time or really worrying about having. One with the Word is only going to be for emergencies, and Master Scrivener, because we can't pass it to other people, I think really holds it back a little bit. And so the benefit there is okay, but not the best. For that reason, I have to take everything into consideration here. Obviously, the higher level features have a little bit less weight than the lower ones, but still, I think that as a kit, it certainly does not get better over time. And so the later you play this, I think the worse. But I think as far as, up through your 6th level spells, this is a ton of fun, and I think it's really cool. Overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's an 8+. Maybe even a 9-, I don't know. But I think it's an 8+. I think it's quite good. I don't think it's as good as some of the 9s that we talked about, like last week with the Necromancy Wizard. I don't think it's quite as good as that. I think it's good, but I don't think it's quite as good. So yeah, and that's me trying to be objective because I love this. This is one of my favorite wizards that's out there. But ultimately, I have to recognize that there are stronger options out there despite my bias. And so I just don't think it is quite as good as some of the options that we've talked about previously. So let me know, do you agree, disagree? I know some people are probably going to say it's a 9, it's a 10. Let me know why down in the comments below. And of course, later this week, we're going to be building one, and I am looking forward to doing that. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.